Hello, everybody. It is time for the 330 to go Cavaliers Hoops Wire NBA Sports Talk Show. How are you? Happy Thursday. Things in this neck of the woods are pretty good. You know, it's not 330 to go area code, but it is Cleveland. And Caitlin Clark and the women's Final Four is here in Cleveland. That's pretty cool. Caitlin Clark even tweeted about it with the first word in her tweet being the word Cleveland. So after they won their Elite Eight game against LSU, a rematch of last year's title game, which was I guess the most watched sporting event other than including the NBA Finals and all college football games except for Ohio State, Michigan. That's how big women's basketball has become, more specifically Caitlin Clark. John Sable, who was a guest of the show here a couple weeks ago and is going to be back on. If you remember, I don't know if he brought it up then, but he's covering it for Fox 8 News, the women's Final Four. And guess what? He sent me a picture today. It's actually on the Iowa women's basketball Instagram page of John Sable obnoxiously reaching his mic out and trying to, while Caitlin Clark is speaking to the media. So John made the Iowa women's Instagram page. So that's my lone announcement for today. But I will say this, really, Caitlin Clark's like the most popular athlete in America right now. She's like the Taylor Swift of sports right now. I mean, she's far and away the most popular, at least obviously not just women's college basketball player, but really, I mean, can you think of a more popular athlete right now? I can't. She's really been all over the news. So, and I don't know whether you like Taylor Swift or not. That's, I think Taylor Swift's probably the most popular person in the world right now, for better or worse. I'm Gen X, so I don't really have an opinion on Taylor Swift. Is that okay to not have an opinion? I mean, I don't listen to her music unless she were to like tour with Pearl Jam or some of the 90s country artists that I like, which I guess she started as a country artist, right? But anyway, Gen X people like myself don't really have a lot of opinions or get too worked up about things. But I will say this. I've got opinions on the Cleveland Cavaliers right now. I've got plenty of those. If you read hoopswire.com, which I hope you're all doing, you will be able to see some of those opinions, not just from me, but from Kendrick Perkins, who, again, I know some of you may not care for his analysis. I like Kendrick Perkins. I think that he's kind of brings some real NBA credibility to the ESPN studios. So anyway, my opinion on the Cavs right now is what's going on. I mean, they look really good in Utah against Colin Sexton and a bunch of G Leaguers. Although Bryce Sensabaugh from Ohio State has been playing very well for the Utah Jazz. So that's nice to see. And Colin Sexton's having a real good year for them too. Maybe not so nice to see, I guess. Although I still don't think he's as good as Donovan Mitchell. In fact, it's not just me. Donovan Mitchell's an all-NBA player when he's healthy. Colin Sexton's a really nice scorer, plays super hard. So anyway, the Cavs looked great against the Utah Jazz the other night. And then they came out against Phoenix Suns and looked like they still were kind of asleep. Gave up 72 points in the first half. Then we went to halftime, and that's where Kendrick Perkins came on at halftime and talked about Cavs just. Now he said they look like they don't like each other, which I know is not necessarily true. being in the locker room, being around the team. I know that I've said that before on this podcast, on this show, that the Cavs certainly, the players certainly, they're as close as I've seen a team and as drama-free as I've seen a team in Cleveland since I've been covering the Cavs, which, started around 2007 or so. So I don't think it's that they don't like each other. It's just there's something a little bit amiss. And I liked what I saw from the Cavs in the second half. Look, going into Phoenix, let's go back to Sunday. Going into Denver against the defending world champs and getting blown out, that's a bad look. I didn't expect them to win in Denver. I didn't expect them to win in Phoenix. But what you do want to see is a better effort. I mean, guys, right now they're 10-14 since the All-Star break. I don't know if you know that. But, they went into Phoenix after, granted, second night of a back-to-back on the road. They're winding up this really difficult road trip. So it's understandable that, they may be a little bit sluggish. But, the effort, Kendrick Perkins called the effort into question. He said, look, this is a younger team that's supposed to be, they're the number 3 seed in the Eastern Conference still, and they're supposed to be challenging, I don't know for a championship, but at least they want to make a nice run in the playoffs. And in January, when they had won 17 of 18 to kick off 2024, they looked like a team that could really challenge in the Eastern Conference. Now they kind of look like first-round playoff fodder. I don't think they'll lose in the first round, depending on matchup. But I'm just saying what they look like right now, and it's not been good. So they got blown off the floor by the Nuggets. Then Donovan Mitchell sits out, and they go and win in one of their best all-around efforts of the season in Utah. Looked as good as ever in Utah, and that game was without Donovan Mitchell. Darius Garland, I thought, played one of his better games against Utah. And then all of a sudden, you go into Phoenix and you give up 72 points in the first half. It's almost like the Suns were just out there at shooting practice alone. So anyway, I thought that the Cavs really cleaned it up in the second half. JB Bickerstaff alluded to that. Really saw some great effort. I thought Donovan Mitchell, was fantastic in terms of effort. There was never any questioning that. And he was really leading the way, played with a lot of energy in the second half. And they cut the lead to 11 at one point. They were down by 20 some in the first half, cut the lead to 11 in the third quarter. They were 8 of 8 from the field in the third quarter to start the third quarter, made all 8 of their first 8 shots in the third quarter. And then what? Here, I'll recap it for you without opinion. Darius Garland missed the layup. Darius Garland missed a jumper. Darius Garland missed at least one more layup. At least one more, maybe 2. And then he dribbled the ball off his leg out of bounds. Run over! I know a lot of you don't, reading my notifications on Facebook and Twitter or X or whatever it's called now. I know a lot of you are not real big on the season Darius Garland's had, and that's understandable. He's been way out of sorts. Just has not been himself this year. And now, granted, he did miss a month with a broken jaw, dropped 8 pounds when that happened, and just has not been the same this season. I didn't think he was real good before the broken jaw. I thought he was better than he is now. Right now, he looks like a guy who should be coming off the bench. A good player off the bench, but a guy who should be coming off the bench, and that's not what you want from a guy with a max contract. So a couple comments here. Mike mentioned, hi, Mike, how are you? Mike mentioned that the women's tournament, and I lost that real fast. Let me check this. Oh, the women's tournament drew 12.3 million people watch the LSU Iowa game. That's what it was. 12.3 million people I was one of them. You know what I did? I was at the gym. So I was watching it while I was working out. And so I was done working out, and there was about 6 minutes left in the game, or five, somewhere in that range. And it was still within reach for LSU. So I thought, you know what? This is a good way for me to get some cardio in. So I'll get on the treadmill, watch the game. I'll get on the treadmill for 10 minutes, watch the game, watch the end of the game. So I'm on the treadmill, and I'm thinking, well, I'll just stay here until the end of the game. So it was the last 5 minutes of the game. Guess how long I was on the treadmill? 24 minutes. Either the game was going to end or I was. I wasn't sure which would come first. On the bright side, I probably lost 6 pounds that day. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it was a fantastic game, and that women's tournament, I think, is just, with the fact that it's such a big deal with Caitlin Clark, the University of Connecticut, Don Staley, who's the coach at South Carolina, and they're undefeated, are on the other side of the bracket. Iowa plays UConn, which, clearly a women's basketball traditional power, UConn for years. And then on the other side, South Carolina is playing NC State, I believe, which I think NC State's a sleeper. And I know I'm bouncing around here between the women's tournament and the Cavs. So if you have a problem with that, you might want to leave now, because I'm going to keep doing it. But anyway, the other side of the bracket has South Carolina, which is undefeated. Don Staley's just one of the most magnificent coaches in basketball, not just women's basketball, but I mean, year after year after year of success for her, and really just one of the classiest people in basketball. I'm obviously covering the NBA, so I can't follow college and women's college all that much, but I know a lot about Dawn Staley, and I know, the people who do cover that team really love her. Her players love her, and she's been a remarkable success. And every time I see her in a press conference, she's really cool. She's like the opposite of Greg Popovich. Actually, Greg Popovich has always been very nice to me, but I've seen him be not so nice to a few others, including their sideline reporter, the San Antonio Spurs sideline reporter, employed by the team. I've seen Greg Popovich go off on that individual before. Yeah, Northeast Ohio Craft Brewery news. Love Dawn as a player too. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Just really, one of the real Hall of Famers in basketball, without a doubt. Caitlin Clark, another Hall of Famer someday. She is, like I said, all of Cleveland. I hope that they beat UConn, because then you get another day of Caitlin Clark in Cleveland, right? I mean, she's the story. As great as these other stories are, she's the story in basketball right now, in all of sports. And it's taken place in Cleveland, which is really cool. For a guy who, myself, covered both of LeBron runs in Cleveland, or at least the end of the first, and then his second run when Con versus Iowa, by the way. Is there money on that, Mike? I don't know. I'm not a gambling guy, so I don't know. But I think, Iowa, UConn. Sorry, you're right. I'm wrong. Iowa and UConn are meeting the Final Four. I thought for some reason, it was South Carolina versus Iowa that was registering in my disturbed mind. My apologies, Mike. Iowa, UConn will be a great game. UConn, obviously a power. Iowa, the one thing I will say about the Hawkeyes is clearly you don't get to the Final Four in 2 years in a row when you're a one-person team, right? One-woman team. They've obviously got more than just her, but she makes their world go round. So anyway, so I got off track. Let's go back to the Cavs real fast. Scott Moskovitz, one of the top fans on my Facebook page. Always appreciate him tuning in and following along. I'm sure I mention him every week on this show, and that is highly likely to continue. I think that I think that Scott said the game was painful to watch, and He's talking about the Cavs Suns. Yeah, it's funny because usually I don't stick with it. I'll just keep it on in the background and then update the website with something else, maybe to get people's minds off the Cavs. But I stuck with this one last night, despite the fact that Scott was right that it was painful to watch. And I went back into it and looked, and then the Cavs cut it to 11 in the third quarter, and I thought, well, maybe Phoenix is, even though they have Durant and Bradley Beal and Devin Booker, is historically this season been really bad in the fourth quarter. They've been the worst fourth quarter team in the NBA this season, according to Doris Burke last night on ESPN. So, and I wouldn't have any doubt about that. I've seen them blow some leads. So, I thought maybe the Cavs would climb back in, and then when those 3 turnovers happened, I'm sorry, missed layups, turnovers, Phoenix went down and scored. It just kind of really took the air out of their bubble, and I wrote that in my dribbles. I said, I'm not writing anything that the Cavs or Darius Garland don't already think, but right now, unfortunately, I'm a Garland fan, so it pains me to say this, but he, more nights than not, has been hurting the team. So, but hopefully there's still 6 games to get it turned around. 5 games to get it turned around. So anyway, let me answer this, and then we'll go back into the playoff race. It says, what are my thoughts on Bronny James entering the transfer portal? Everybody does it nowadays, so I don't have I'm back to being Mr. Gen X here. I don't have a real big opinion on it, but I would say that I think it's interesting. They're hiring Eric Musselman, USC, where Bronny played first season, and they're hiring Eric Musselman as coach. He's a Brecksville High grad. I talked with Bob Finan a few weeks ago about Eric Musselman on the show. He's going from Arkansas to USC, played high school basketball at Brecksville. His dad is Bill Musselman, the former coach and GM of the Cavs long ago in the early 80s. And that's why Eric ended up at Brecksville. But obviously the news about Bronny came before USC made a hire. Andy Enfield, their former coach, USC's former coach, is going to SMU. And USC was really a disappointment this year. The truth is they were supposed to be a top 25 team after they got Bronny and like 2 or 3 other really good recruits, and they finished 14-18. So, and didn't see any postseason of any kind, not even those smaller, like forget the NIT. They didn't even go like the college basketball invitational or whatever that is. So, I don't know. I don't know what to make of Bronny doing that. I think that if I were him, and obviously being Bronny James, he has such a huge name, we're hearing him linked to Duquesne, right? Because LeBron's former teammate, Drew Joyce at St. V, Drew Joyce III, former Akron U point guard, and the son of St. V coach Drew Joyce III, is now replacing Akron product Keith Dambrot at Duquesne after they went to the tournament this year and won a game. Of course, LeBron sent Duquesne a pair of those LeBron signature Nikes before their first NCAA tournament game. So I would think that Duquesne, I'll tell you this. Now, Bronny, granted, he had a cardiac issue before the season, and that was obviously very unfortunate, and it's hard to gauge his season because of that. He looked okay. Probably not even okay. At least not as far as, his expectations are up here. Fair or not, that's where they are. And his performance was, 4.8 points, I think, 3.5 rebounds. But, he was working his way back from a very scary situation. But anyway, my point is, based on that, frankly, if I were him, I would go to Duquesne. He could get a lot of minutes. He wouldn't feel pressured. And I know, Duquesne's not in a power. I guess maybe they are in a power. No, they're not in a Power 5 conference. I believe that's the Atlantic 10 that Duquesne is in. It's kind of a mid-major, but I think Bronny would get a lot of opportunity there, be very comfortable there. Obviously, his dad is a fan of the Dukes, and he's probably going to continue to be because of the Drew Joyce relationship there. So that's what I would do if I were Bronny, and he's determined to leave USC. Frankly, I would stay at USC now that Eric Musselman's the coach, because I think Eric Musselman's one of the best coaches I've ever seen or been around. And I don't just say he's a friend, longtime friend, but I really think the guy's a fantastic coach. I have other friends in the coaching business that I wouldn't say that about. So it's not just because I'm biased. And I won't tell you who those other friends are. We'll keep that our secret. But mostly with Bronny, you hope for continued good health. I know a lot of people would love to see him go to Ohio State. I think that would be nice too. Just whatever. And look, I'm not for this transfer portal in college basketball and college football being as crazy as it is. I think that there should be something else if you transfer, whether you have to sit out a season or, there's a way to kind of contain it, because I don't think it's healthy for the game. I don't know that it's healthy for kids who are starting, and I know I'm getting off track here, but I don't know that it's real good for kids to, at such a young age, just be able to keep skipping colleges. Maybe maybe you should be allowed to transfer once. I think that's reasonable. But beyond that, it's just, it's tough because, so many of these kids aren't going to the NBA. 99.5% of them aren't going to the NBA. They're not going to go play pro football. They're not going to go play soccer. And I have a son who's a college athlete, track. And, if it didn't work out, I would be like, yeah, go ahead and transfer to another school. But now he's super thrilled with the school he's at now. But if it weren't, and the coach weren't using him or something along those lines, I think he should have the right to be able to transfer once. But if he wanted to transfer again, I'd be like, dude, come on. Maybe it's not the coach anymore. Or, you know what? It's just a situation where you're going to do track for 4 years and then, you're done. There's no pro track league. Even if there was, he'd have a 0.5% chance of making it, just like any other college athlete. So, yeah, I think you're in school mostly for school, and I know the athletes bring in money and all that, but do they really bring in a lot of money at Duquesne? Are college football players at Duquesne bringing in money from the school? Probably not, probably losing money, So anyway, that's a whole nother discussion, and I will have, I just said whole nother. That's another discussion entirely. There. Sorry. See, I am a writer and editor, so I will edit my own comments. But anyway, as far as the Cleveland Cavaliers go, we will get back on that topic now. I think that, here they are. Okay, third place in the Eastern Conference still. But guess what? And it helps that the Bucks have been terrible too. At least the Cavs aren't the Bucks. The Bucks lost back-to-back games to the Washington Wizards, who are terrible. And then the next night, the Bucks came home and got the Memphis Grizzlies, who are like so injury decimated and are playing for the lottery. And the Bucks lost to the Memphis Grizzlies in Milwaukee. Now, granted, Milwaukee didn't have Damian Lillard or Chris Middleton, but they still had Giannis Antetokounmpo. They still had, a bunch of other guys that are supposed to, Bobby Portis, all these guys. You're not supposed to lose the Memphis Grizzlies at home. Not when you have your best player, not when you have an MVP, NBA MVP candidate in Giannis Antetokounmpo. So it's a good thing we don't do a Bucks show here on 330 to go, because I'd be really laying into them. I'd really be riding them hard Yeah, I just got done saying I'm a writer and editor, and I don't know which word to use. But anyway, as far as the Cavs, yeah, still in third in the Eastern Conference. And, now they're a game and a half ahead, or maybe it's just a game. Am I right? Is it a game or maybe a half game ahead of Orlando? I don't know. We'll look at that in a second. But it's tight. It's real tight. And, as I wrote in my pregame or postgame dribbles from last night, if the Cavs right now, if they finish third, their first round opponent, if the playoffs started right now today, guess who the Cavs' first round opponent would be? Time's up. Miami Heat, defending Eastern Conference champion, saved their best basketball for the playoffs. Miami Heat. Cavs would be the 3 seed. Heat are currently the 6 seed. So, in my opinion, the Cavs really need to hope that the Indiana Pacers get into that 6 seed. I thought it would be Orlando for a while, but it appears that Orlando is hot right now, and they've moved into fourth ahead of the New York Knicks, who are injury prone. And guess what? The Knicks lost Julius Randle for the season. So, I think that he had a nice series against the Cavs last year. I think that would help the Cavs if they were to face the Knicks. If the Cavs did fall down to 4 and had another 4-5 matchup like last season against the Knicks, it would come without Julius Randle, their starting power forward, and a guy who was an all-star this season. So, look, I don't think it matters who the Cavs play. And Scott said that he could see the Cavs losing to the Heat 4-1. Yeah, me too. The way the Cavs have gone this year, I compare them to the Browns. And before the playoffs, when the Browns got there and they were riding the arm of Joe Flacco and were hot, I said it wouldn't be a surprise to me if they got to the Super Bowl, and it wouldn't be a surprise to me if they got bounced in the first round. Of course, the Browns being the Browns, they lost it in the first round. I mean, and I was on this show. I was on Mike's show as a guest because, in lieu of anyone better. But he had me on the show, and one of the things that was said there was the Browns are like eating at a bad restaurant for 20 years, and you keep going back to the same restaurant anyway, hoping that this will be the time the food will be decent. But I would say the same thing about the Cleveland Cavaliers. You just don't know what to expect from them in the playoffs because they've been so different. Now, unfortunately, the bad difference is going on right now. The stuff you don't want to see before the playoffs. Now, granted, this is a tough trip, okay? You've got the Lakers on Saturday afternoon before the Final Four games. You've got the Clippers on Sunday afternoon. I believe also before the women's championship game. I'm not real sure on that. Don't quote me. We'll just delete this out of there. But they have the Lakers and Clippers, Cavs. Okay, so those are going to be tough. Los Angeles, tough place. LeBron James and the Lakers are rolling. They've won 8 of 9. They're getting ready for the playoffs. LeBron's getting ready for his whole, what did he call it? Zero Dark 23, something like that. So he's getting ready to hunker down, get in playoff mode. That's a tough game to win anyway. They won there last year. That was early in the season, though, and beat LeBron James. And they were playing, a lot better. Clippers, I mean, that team's loaded, right? It's a tough place to play. Okay, Scott said that both games are at 3, and so is the women's final. He might be best suited to skip the Cavs game that day, playing in the back-to-back against the Clippers. He might be better off watching the women's final. But then things lighten up, right? Okay, you have 3 games after this weekend. They're all in Cleveland. You've got the Hornets, right? The Grizzlies and the Pacers. Am I right about the Hornets? Somebody hop on that. I'm not positive. I know they have the Grizzlies and the Pacers. Pacers are no cakewalk. They're really fighting for playoff positioning too. They're right there with the Heat for that sixth spot. And the sixth spot, of course, you avoid the play-in tournament. Pacers are going to be super determined. Hopefully, when the Cavs play them, maybe it's the Nets that the Cavs play. I don't know. I'm too lazy to look at their schedule because it would take me a couple minutes, and and nobody wants to sit here and watch me look at the schedule. I don't think. But anyway, so the Cavs have these games coming up. Oh, I think I froze up there for a second. The Cavs have these games coming up against the Lakers, Clippers, and then they get 3 at home. So a lot of things can happen there at home that will, theoretically keep them in that third spot. I've been predicting that they're going to stay in third, and I think that back stretch, those final 3 games at home, will enable them to do that, will enable them to stay in third. So that would be obviously something that you want to try to do, so that you can avoid a potential second round matchup with the Boston Celtics if you are able to get. Obviously, you'd much rather play the Milwaukee Bucks right now, right? In the second round. This is all contingent on the Cavs getting out of the first round, of course. So, yeah, it's just a matter of, look, Darius Garland's got to turn around. The bench last night was barely used. That confused me. Against the Suns, barely used. Karis LeVert had 11 points, right? And then Sam Merrill had a couple of free throws. That was the bench scoring, but the bench barely played. Sam Merrill, I think, played 5 minutes. Marcus Morris played 4 on the second night of a back-to-back. I just didn't get that. I'm not usually one to call in the coaching to question, but I just did not understand that George Niang didn't play a lot. I just didn't get that. It really seemed like they were running the starters into the ground a little bit much, especially on a night when they didn't have it. I don't know. Maybe JB Biggerstaff doesn't trust some of those younger guys, but certainly Sam Merrill had a really nice game in Utah the night before. So I was a little surprised that he didn't get more minutes. Now there is a philosophy in coaching that can say sometimes, you can see that Darius Garland doesn't have it going. So you keep him out there to get it going. You figure the game's lost anyway, right? You're going to lose to the Suns. So maybe keep Garland out there, see if he can't get into some kind of rhythm to help you moving forward. That's all I could come up with. Okay? If you want me to excuse why those guys on the bench weren't playing, that's all I come up with. Marcus Morris, I have no idea why he didn't play. Not that Marcus Morris is going to save the day, but he can go in and do some things. And they just signed him for the rest of the season. When you don't have Isaac Okoro and don't have Dean Wade, why isn't Marcus Morris playing? I don't know. Maybe one of you can answer that. I have no idea. But I would think that he's, the type of player that they would want to use in the playoffs. So why not get him some reps now, as opposed to 4 minutes in a game that you've clearly lost? You're not coming back to win that game. So where are the guys who you're going to be counting on come the playoffs? So yeah, not a great night for the Cavs. Got a couple more opportunities to get things right, and then you get home and you finish up the season at home. Presumably, you open the playoffs at home. As bad as things have been going, then yeah, you have an opportunity to open the well, you should, unless the wheels come completely off. You'll be opening the season at home, and they could come completely off. I hate to say that, but they're not. Their lead over the Magic and Knicks isn't that great. Now they can get passed by the Magic. That's not a big deal. But if you get passed by both, and all of a sudden you're the 5th seed, you're opening playoffs on the road. I don't like that scenario at all. I don't care who they're playing. I wouldn't think that the Cavs would like that either, because then you're backing into the playoffs. So anyway, women's Final Four, really cool in Cleveland. Friday night, Final Four games. Sunday, the championship game, and then we have the Cavs are back home to finish the season. So there's a lot going on with Cleveland in basketball right now, and will be over the at least next few weeks. Because even if the Cavs, God forbid, were to lose in the first round, they would still be playing until the end of April. So, yeah, and I know the Guardians have started. That's exciting. There's opening day on Monday. So, not to mention the eclipse. Is it solar eclipse? The lunar happened the other night, right? Is that? I don't know. It's an eclipse. I don't know what the name of it is. Can you tell I've been writing about sports my whole life and have no education in any other area? Some of you will probably say I'm not even that educated in sports. I wouldn't blame you. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I didn't take a drink of my cup today. Here we go. Cleveland Cavaliers basketball. Buy all their merchandise or something and pray that they give us money. And if you're wondering if I'm going to do this every show just to be smart alecky, the answer is yes. I will probably do this every show. Maybe the Cavs won't give us money, but it will annoy them. And that's really been my strength most of my life, is annoying people. And my pets. I annoy them too. But anyway, so yeah, thanks so much for joining. I only went 40 minutes, so we're 10 minutes shorter than last week. But once we have a guest, once we get a little closer to playoffs, things really start heating up. That way we'll, certainly go longer. Have a couple of guests. I had a couple lined up, but one of them got sick and the other one got busy. So I guess we know where I stand. But yeah, there's some cool stuff going on here, basketball wise, sports wise, and I appreciate everybody following along here. Hoopswire, obviously, we've been running a lot of stories, not just on the Cavs, but on every NBA team. We try to cover all the news that we can, and we've been running a lot of historical stuff on there too. That you guys are gobbling up. So we're going to keep doing that. Appreciate you. In fact, I have one on Dr. J's final game in Cleveland coming up here soon, which was a big night. I've got newspaper clippings and all kinds of stuff from that. So for those of you who are old enough to know who Dr. J was. But anyway, so we got a bunch of that. And I guess that's it for now. Keep fingers crossed at the Cavs. I don't think that they need to win either game in Los Angeles. They got one on the road against Utah. I thought that's all they needed to do, but they do need to play better. They need to play, show signs that this is a team that can win a first round playoff series. Because once you get out of the first round, you're feeling good about yourself, get some confidence, and then you could go back to playing like maybe you were playing in January, right? So anyway, that's it for now. And I wanted to thank you all for joining, and we will chat at you soon.